Section 1. You will hear a talk between a customer and a travel agent. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 10. Good morning. I'd like to book a flight to Toronto, please.
Certainly. Flying from Sydney?
Yes, on Thursday, please.
Thursday the 16th, right? There are 3 flights that day. Do you prefer flying with any particular airline?
I've heard that Air Canada is good, but expensive. Is there a big difference in prices between the airlines? I'll be flying business class.
Yes, there is. Air Canada is the most expensive airline at $4,000 to $6,000 for business class, depending on the date of return. Qantas is $3,000 to $6,000, and Pacific, the budget airline, charges between $2,000 and $3,500.
Wow, that's quite a difference in prices. I'm returning on from Wednesday 22nd, so could you check the return prices for me?
Sure. Let me just enter the return date into the computer. OK. Air Canada has tickets for $4,600. Qantas has them for $4,200. Pacific has tickets for $3,200. Those prices all include taxes and surcharges.
OK. Before I make a decision, I would like to know the departure and arrival times in both directions.
Of course. Let's look at Air Canada first. Leaves Sydney at 10 a.m. and arrives in Toronto at 10 a.m. local time. There's a stopover in Vancouver. The Qantas flight leaves Sydney at 1:45 and arrives at 10:15 a.m. There's also a stopover in Vancouver, but it's shorter than the Air Canada one. Pacific flies via Los Angeles and leaves at 6:15, arriving at 11:55 p.m.
Oh, that doesn't sound very convenient. Flying by Pacific, I mean.
Well, budget airlines do offer cheaper tickets, but they are often not so advantageous in other ways.
How about the returned flights?
Let me check. The Air Canada flight leaves Toronto at 4 o'clock and arrives at 6 o'clock local time. The Qantas flight leaves at 9 a.m. and arrives at 11 a.m. local time in Sydney. The Pacific flight leaves Toronto at 10:25 and arrives at 6:10 local time in Sydney. Again, not very convenient timing.
No, it isn't. Are the stopovers the same as on the outward journey?
Yes, they are.
Well, I have a business appointment on Wednesday the 22nd in the morning, so unfortunately I can't take the Qantas flight. The Pacific flight times are too inconvenient, so I'll take the Air Canada flight, even though it's more expensive.
Right, I'll book that for you, shall I? Do you have your passport with you?
Yes, I do. Here you are.
Thank you. I'll just enter your details. OK. Could you just check this printout? Make sure that I've spelt your name correctly and have written your passport number correctly too. Will you be paying by credit card?
Yes, I have a company credit card. Here you are. Oh, my name is Reese with a C, not with an S.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll correct that. R-E-E-C-E.
And my given names are hyphenated. Mary-Ann, with an E. Oh, you've got that. Sorry.
OK. Mary-Ann. Joined together with a hyphen. Is the passport number OK?
Yes. Could you give me an official invoice, please? I need it for my company.
Certainly. Shall I use the company name as it appears on the credit card, ABC Stocks?
Yes.
OK, thank you. Could you sign here and here? Thank you. I'll just print out your ticket.
Thank you. That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 2. Section 2. You will hear a receptionist, Doreen, talking to a group of parents about the Daisy Daycare Centre. First, you have time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17.
Hello everyone. I'm Doreen, the receptionist at the Daisy Childcare Centre. Thank you all for coming to our open evening. I'll just show you round and tell you a bit about the place. First of all, I will have to ask you to leave your sneakers and sandals, etc. here on the shoe rack, just inside the main door. You know how the young ones love crawling around the floor, so our policy is no street footwear inside. As you can see, our facility is very open plan. There are lots of different activity areas, and we like to have pretty good visibility throughout the centre. This central area to the left is where we all gather for stories, songs, and some games. That's why the big circular carpet is there. Everyone comes to sit there 2 or 3 times a day. I can see some of you looking at our TV. Some parents worry that we might just dump the kids there to watch rubbish all day. But of course that's not the case. In fact, we only use it occasionally. For example, we use it if we have a story on a DVD, and then we get the kids to do a bit of acting based on that. That bookcase there beside the TV gets a lot of use, though. Some of the older kids choose to sit and read or look at picture books in their free time, but we never allow them unsupervised TV. If you look along the wall on the far side of the little gate leading into the main room, you can see our kitchen play area. It has lots of utensils, pots and pans. And that cupboard closer to the corner is the dress-up cupboard. That's a very popular area, with the boys as well as the girls. You'd be surprised how much the boys get into acting and make-believe. Now over here, opposite the gate and behind the big lunch table, are the sinks and the painting area, and then the doors to the outside. To the right of those outside doors, you can see hooks and little cubby holes on the wall for coats, bags, and outdoor shoes. The children can keep slippers in there, but most of them run around indoors in their socks or bare feet. If you can bear it, I think we should pop out into the cold for a moment to have a look round outdoors. We'll just stay under the veranda. The sandpit is over there at the far left of the outside area, and that box next to it is storage space for buckets and spades, and lots of trucks and diggers to push around or even ride on. The slide beside that is popular, and so are the 3 climbing walls over by the fence. Some parents think that's a bit adventurous for preschoolers, but the older ones love them. The ground is covered with bark, so it's not a harsh surface when they do fall. The ordinary swings and a tire swing are here in front, where we can keep an eye on everyone, and then the chickens are way over on the far right, so they can have a bit of peace and quiet occasionally. Okay, so let's go back inside, and I can talk about our rules and policies.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 18 to 20.
As you probably already know, the government sets limits on adult-child ratios, but we try to improve on those wherever we can. There are different ratios for under and over 2-year-olds. For the under 2s, the rules are 1 adult to 4 children, and we basically stick to that, except that we have an extra roving staff member with no allocated children who helps out wherever there's a need. The older kids have a 1:8 ratio, and again we try to have an extra staff member on site. All of our staff are fully qualified, but we do have trainees from the local polytech at certain times of year. We do have pretty strict rules about pickup times here. It's a real problem if parents are late, and we end up with far too many kids for the number of staff. So we ask you to be very punctual about collecting your children. We have had to ask a couple of consistently late parents to leave, but of course this is only a last resort. We have quite a long waiting list here, especially for the over 2s, but you're welcome to put your name down. The average lead time is usually about 9 months, but sometimes we get unexpected vacancies. For example, maybe a family has to move to another city for work or something, so their child is withdrawn. This means, if you're lucky, your child could be admitted in 3 months or so. Now, are there any questions?
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear a talk between a professor and a student. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 30. Good morning, Clara. Take a seat. Right, I've read your first draft of your project on housing. Well done.
Thank you. I know it's only a first draft though, so I'm sure you have some suggestions on how it can be improved. I was very nervous at first because it wasn't my first choice of topic. I had wanted to do something on voting patterns, but getting information, well, it didn't look possible within the time frame.
Don't worry. I think that you have made a good choice. Yes, a comparison of the factors influencing house prices. Very topical.
Definitely. There seems to be something about housing prices in the newspapers every day. I just wanted to compare the different factors. You know, location, the proximity of facilities such as schools.
As I said, a good choice of topic. Now, the first part is very well done. You clearly introduce what you are going to look at, why and how.
Do you think that I have covered enough points there?
I think so. Did you have anything else in mind? You know, something else you'd like to cover?
Well, a friend suggested that I might include crime rates.
Actually, that's a very good idea. You might consider it. It is something that many people take into account, consciously or otherwise. When choosing a place to live, nowadays the police are required to keep quite detailed statistics on crime, and you can get them fairly easily. I mean, it's easy enough to ask for them, but it might take a while for the police to get them to you.
OK, I'll make a note of that. Contact police for crime statistics.
Now, I have to say that I found the middle part more difficult to get through.
Oh, I thought I had done that rather well.
Don't worry, it's not awful. It's just that, well, try to take a uniform approach. Use one for each criteria people use when choosing housing. That way you're comparing like with like rather than different things.
I see. So I should stick with one as far as possible. Yes, that does seem logical. So I don't really need to get more data or write much more. Instead, I need to change. I've got it.
It just makes it a lot easier to read. That's the main thing.
Yes, of course. How about the conclusion?
Based on the information you've provided, I think that you've done very well. You'll have to see if the new information you include changes your conclusion at all. It probably won't make a big difference, but you might see variations in some areas.
OK. Do you think that I used appropriate headings? And is the bibliography OK? I know that a lot of professors look long and hard at that, whilst most students think it's unimportant.
Yes, professors find the bibliography very useful. It tells us where you are getting your information from and whether those sources are appropriate. Your bibliography is fine, but you might consider changing the format. Here's a printout of the most widely accepted format. You can keep that.
Thank you. And the headings?
I made a few notes. Here are some suggestions. Don't feel that you have to use them. I won't be offended, but some of your headings are long-winded, whereas others are relatively short, as they should be.
Thank you. I'll take a look at these later.
How long did you work on the whole thing?
Well, 2 months, perhaps on average of 3 hours a day. Not more than that. Probably 150 hours.
That's about what I would recommend. Anything less than 120 hours is going to be detrimental to the project. You'll probably need another 50 hours work on it in total. You've still got a month, so you should manage it easily.
Yes, a couple of hours a day. Easy.
I'd suggest that you come back to see me in, about, let's say, 3 weeks' time. Then you should be virtually finished, and I can have another look before you do your final proofreading, before handing it in.
OK, I'll see you after one of the seminars to make an appointment. Is that OK?
Certainly. Thanks, Clara.
Thank you, Professor. That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 4. You will hear a talk on the importance of soil in organic agriculture. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Welcome to this talk on soil science and organic farming. Dirt, soil, earth, loam, mud or dust, it doesn't matter what you call it, is of primary importance in the production of food and other crops. Most people think of it just as a substrate or medium in which plants grow, but it's more than that. It's actually a living entity. Or it should be if it's healthy, and human health is affected by the health of the soil. Healthy, living soil is literally crawling with life. There are the obvious earthworms, which burrow in the soil and help to aerate and improve it, beetles and other hard-backed insects, and various invertebrates like centipedes. Then there are fungi and bacteria, also living forms. Healthy soil needs food, air, and water to help plants grow. And the more nutrients in plants, the more available for humans and livestock. It stands to reason, therefore, that plants grown in poor soil will have few nutrients to pass on to the consumer, whose well-being will be worse off over the long term. So, where do plants get their nourishment? Most of it comes from the soil. Some nutrients are made up of minerals from the earth, while others come from dead plant and animal matter, which is broken down over time by the living insects and other organisms in the soil. Plants depend on these little living creatures to convert minerals and other vital elements into a utilizable form that can be taken up by the plants. And it's a synergistic relationship. In turn, the plants assist those helpful organisms by releasing sugars and enzymes back into the soil. Before I go any further, let's take a look at the structure of soil. Now, if you look at the diagram, you will see that soil is made up of many different layers. Let's start at the bottom. This is the bedrock under all the other layers. The layer above that is called regolith. Here, the bedrock is slightly broken up, but plant roots don't penetrate this layer. Moving up the chart to the next layer, we come to the subsoil, which contains clay and mineral deposits. On top of that is the alluviation or leaching layer. This is quite light in colour and is mostly just sand and silt. As we get near the surface, we find the topsoil. You will hear a lot of talk about topsoil amongst farmers and other agriculturalists. It's the most important layer of all because it's where seeds germinate and roots grow. Now, at the top of the chart, you will see a comparatively thin layer. This is organic matter that is still in the process of decomposition. It mostly consists of leaf litter and humus. Just think of the surface of the forest floor, partly decayed leaves and twigs, that sort of thing. As you can imagine, good soil forms very slowly over time, but it can be lost very rapidly through erosion. And, in addition, soil quality can be affected by pollution due to anything from industrial waste to the artificial fertilizers used by conventional farmers, which have been shown to suppress the diverse life forms in the soil. This is why organic agriculture is the way of the future. Let's take a quick look at the conventional system, which is often based on monoculture, the production of a single large crop. It relies on chemicals for fertilizer and pest control. It is also becoming an increasingly common practice to use genetically engineered seeds. And more chemicals are used to control insects and fungi, which attack crops in storage and during transportation. Also, did you know that there is no requirement for conventional growers to maintain records of their production practices? Organic growers, on the other hand, choose the most environmentally friendly options for dealing with pests and disease problems, working towards prevention in the first place. Some of the strategies they employ include alternating the crops grown in each field, as opposed to monocropping. Because different plants add different nutrients to the soil, by rotating crops, the soil is naturally replenished. This can do away with the need for pesticides, because the problem insects' life cycles are naturally interrupted. Surrounding crops with green waste can not only conserve moisture in the soil, but it can prevent weeds from springing up, and it also feeds the beneficial microorganisms. When it's ploughed under, it feeds the soil by building more organic matter. Organic farmers often release beneficial insects as predators, which precludes the need for artificial pesticides. Animal manure, combined with green waste materials, correctly composted to kill pathogens and weed seeds, fertilizes the soil in a way that encourages life rather than suppressing it. And, by the way, use of manure in organic farming is highly regulated. In fact, all agricultural inputs are evaluated for their long-term effects on the environment, regardless of whether they are synthetic or natural. To sum up, organic farming is the only sustainable way of feeding the people on this planet and keeping both the planet and the people in good health.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.